Separate a Whisperflow or IntelliFlow motor from the pump housing to take it in to be rebuilt or have the seals done. First and foremost, you want to make sure that your timer is off so that the pump doesn't kick itself off or on while you're trying to work on it. You want to find wherever the breakers are. In this case, they're right behind the sub panel. I've already turned the breakers off, but you want to make sure that all the power is off going to the motor, because you're messing with electricity. You really don't want to get caught back there with power going to it. So once you verified that the breakers are off and your timer is no longer moving, there's no more power going to the motor, you can go ahead and come over to your pump. And I've already started loosening a couple of the bolts on here. But with the Whisperflow and IntelliFlow, you have 6 9/16 bolts. You've got 2 on top, you've got 2 on the sides, and I know it's kind of hard to see in this corner over here, but the side bolts have little nuts on the back end, and they are free floating, so you want to take a screwdriver or something flat and wedge it in between the nut and the housing of the pump so that you can keep it from turning. A second wrench works great. I just don't have one on hand. Always make sure you set these bolts off to the side where they're not going to get lost or washed away, blown away by the landscapers. And then you have 2 more nuts down on the bottom of the pump. They can be a little tricky to get to, especially when the pump is in an inconvenient spot like this one. But usually once you break them loose, you can take them out by hand. Last bolt here. There we go. So now all 6 bolts are removed that bolt the motor to the housing of the pump. So with that removed, you can kind of wiggle the pump and it should come right out. Now very carefully place it on its face. You don't want to break the diffuser. The very first thing you want to do is take a flathead screwdriver and try to remove this bonding lug. If you can, you may have to use a nut driver and separate it from the body of the pump. These things get pretty rusted, so it's not uncommon for them to strip out. With the bonding wire removed, you can bend it out of the way. You can take your 1/4-inch nut driver to open up the access panel to the back of the motor where the wires are tied in. Once you get those 2 carrier nuts out, you want to separate this plate and set it off to the side where you're not going to lose it, or the 2 screws. Now this is an older Whisperflow, so it's got the older style screws in here. All you need is a flathead screwdriver. You just turn those loose. You don't want to take them all the way out because they will fall into the body of the pump and they are much more difficult to get out. So you separate your 3 wires. You've got 2 hots because it's 240 and your green wire for ground. So once you get those screws loose, you should be able to pull these wires out of the way. If you do happen to pull any of the screws all the way out, try and get them back in right away so that they don't fall down into the body of the pump like that one almost did. If you can't get your fingers in there to get it off the screw, sometimes you can use a screwdriver to help pry it out, or a pair of needle nose pliers sometimes works pretty great. If one of the screws does happen to come out, just set it off to the side and you can put it back in the housing as soon as you're done, but just don't let it drop down into the body. So now you want to straighten your wires here. Now that they're all disconnected, go ahead and pull this collar off the liquid tight fitting. And you want to wiggle as you pull and try and get these wires through the 90. They can be a little stiff and they're a bit of a pain sometimes. There we go. Now that those are out, you can set them off to the side. And you can take your pump in to have it rebuilt. Make sure you keep all the screws and access plates, all that stuff where you can put it back in later. You don't want to lose any of that because it's a pain to find spares for. And that's it. You're good to go.